I want to discuss something that I've mentioned on the podcast but haven't gone into it. A school of thought on the left that is now trying very hard to press the argument that Trump is already disqualified from running for president in 2024. What? So this is a school that seems sort of radical in its claim. It's claiming that you don't have to wait for these trials to proceed. You don't have to wait for Trump to be convicted. You don't have to wait for judicial rulings that Trump is to be jailed, where he either cannot or finds it very difficult to run or is somehow barred from running. None of that. Trump is disqualified from running now. He's ineligible to run in 2024 already, based upon something that's in the Constitution. So who is making this argument? Well, probably its two most prominent advocates are the Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe and a Republican, or maybe former Republican judge. This is a longtime judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals. His name is J. Michael Luttig. They did a recent article, these two, in The Atlantic together, and they drew on some scholarship by two professors, William Bowdy and Michael Stokes-Paulsen, essentially making the same argument. So what I want to do is focus in on the argument, and to do that, I'm turning to an interview with J. Michael Luttig in The New Yorker, in which he discloses what is the basis of his thinking. Now, what is he trying to parse or to explain or to interpret? Well, answer, he's trying to interpret Section 3 of the 14th Amendment in the Constitution. And Section 3 basically says this: if there's any official who has taken an oath to support the Constitution, and if that same official, quote, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof, then you're not eligible to hold office. And essentially what Michael Luttig is saying in this interview is, there you go. Trump did in fact take an oath to support the Constitution. Trump did in fact engage in insurrection or rebellion against the same, and Trump did give aid and comfort to the enemies of the Constitution, who, this is presumably the people who went into the Capitol on January 6th. Now, Luttig is asked in The New Yorker the question, okay, this is what the Constitution says. The Constitution, however, was based upon, at least this amendment, the 14th Amendment, came after the Civil War. So when they were talking about an insurrection or a rebellion, they were talking about an armed effort to overthrow the U.S. government and break the country into two. In what sense is what Trump did comparable to that? And Michael Luttig here has to back off a little bit, and he says, it depends on how you interpret these terms. He agrees that these terms are not self-interpreting. There has to be a factual finding that Trump engaged in insurrection, and that Trump engaged in rebellion, and that Trump gave aid and comfort to the enemies thereof. But what he says is, look, you don't need legislation or laws to block Trump from running again. Basically, the Constitution has spoken pretty clearly. So you need a clear determination of what Trump did, but that will be sufficient. And he gives the example. He says, well, for example, the Constitution says that you need to be 35 years old to run for president. Well, you don't need a law to support that. The Constitution is clear enough. Now, he admits that engaging in insurrection or rebellion is not as clear as being 35 years old. And so he says, but nevertheless, he says, election officials around the country have the right to interpret the Constitution and say, yeah, in my opinion, this official, Trump, who took an oath to support the Constitution, did in fact engage in insurrection or rebellion. Now, you can see right away the problem with this, which is that are you going to have election officials determine for themselves, hey, guess what? I'm going to keep Trump. I'm the Secretary of State of Georgia or Pennsylvania. I'm going to keep Trump off the ballot. He's an insurrectionist. I'm not going to allow him to run. This would be crazy. Think of the implications of that. In fact, Republican officials could do exactly the same. They could pull Joe Biden off the ballot for the same reason and say, listen, he sold out the country to foreign enemies. That's a form of insurrection. He's violated the 14th Amendment. I'm not going to put him on the ballot in Texas. So a prominent judge and a professor at Stanford, Michael McConnell, has said, listen, this is nonsense. He said that there's a statute that Congress enacted. It's 18 U.S.C. 2383. And it is pretty clear in defining a little more clearly that if someone has participated in a rebellion or insurrection, then those found guilty, quote, shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. So this is a whole different matter. You have to be found guilty of rebellion or insurrection. Now, it's very important to note that Trump is not charged with rebellion or insurrection. He's charged with other things. And so this is the problem, I think, that people like J. Michael Luttig, this guy's a never Trumper, he hates Trump, and he realizes that even if Trump is found guilty, all right, Trump is going to appeal. And so he can still run. He might even be jailed and be running from jail, but there's nothing to stop him, it seems, in the law. And so this is why Luttig is saying we don't need the law. We can just turn to the Constitution. And think of the anti-democratic implications of this, because it essentially gives state officials a veto power over who's on the national ticket. And yet Luttig goes on to argue, and I find this whole interview completely unconvincing. For example, here, quote, the calls to Raffensperger, we are talking about one call, but somehow it's become calls, were part and parcel of the rebellion against the United States government. What? Again, look at the call. Look at the context of the call. Trump is merely saying, I won the state. The votes are there. When he says go find them, he means go find the legal votes. And yet here's Luttig. The plan was to overturn the validly held election. Well, nobody claims the election was invalidly held. We're talking about the counting of the election. We're talking about the existence of systematic fraud. We're talking about Trump's belief that there was fraud and his desire to prove it. And then giving aid and comfort to the enemies of the United States, please. Debbie and I are on a really great health journey, but we still struggle to eat enough fruits, veggies, and fiber. Those are all absolutely necessary for all of us, and lucky for us, we discovered Balance of Nature. And what better way to get all your fruits and veggies plus fiber than with Balance of Nature? Now here's Balance of Nature's fruits and veggies. They're made from fresh whole produce. The produce is powdered after an advanced vacuum cold process, which stabilizes the maximum nutrient content. And this is Balance of Nature's Fiber and Spice, a proprietary blend of fiber and 12 spices for overall and digestive health. So join Debbie and me. Start your journey to better health right now. Call 1-800-246-8751 or go to balanceofnature.com. You'll get 35% off your first preferred order by using discount code America. Again, balanceofnature.com. That's the website, or call 800-246-8751. You'll get 35% off your first preferred order by using discount code America.